Good morning, everyone. Oh, come a little closer. We can keep it a little bit more intimate. Good morning. The what? Well, I don't know. Maybe the cold weather is scaring them. I don't know.
It's supposed to snow some more. I think we're supposed to get it east this morning or something like that. You know, an inch.
Went out over it.
You don't live in here in Pennsylvania, what if you were worried about it?
So hopefully all of you have the material. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Did we all recover from the football?
Yeah.
I have more of a food coma than an alcohol.
Good morning. The material is there in the, on the table.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Thank you for the larger print.
Happy birthday, buddy.
You have to thank the people in the office. They are great.
I can put these away, maybe. I know what I mean. I keep forgetting to bring mine. I usually need them by 5. Yes, I get that.
I've done it 4 times.
Oh my gosh.
They want to do absolutely, absolutely. Don't buy a Volvo unless you go overseas. Yes, because you get 15 days of car insurance.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, and then your car comes back used.
I love those conversations before the study. All of them are so essential.
Okay, turn off.
So the Torah portion that you have in front of you is Chukat. That's how you spell it, Chukat. You have the letters on the top, Chet, Kuf, Tav. And you see it's from the book of Numbers. There's a lot of material there, but I wanted to deal with one specific event that is taking place, an event that affected Moses tremendously. You know, Moses, there was no reason for Moses not to enter into the promised land, was it? Poor guy. Worked so hard for 40 years. 40 years just with the people. I mean, you should be compensated for the aggravation that so many people gave Moses for so many years. But an incident took place, and he lost it. He lost the right to enter into the promised land, and Chris told me that she used the text a few Sundays ago, or for sacred water. So now you know what the event maybe was. What was the event that prevented Moses of entering into the promised land? We spoke last week about promised land and entering the promised land, and the 12 spies, 10-2, that the debate there. What was the event that happened to Moses that punished Moses for not entering into the promised land? So we're going to discover this today. It's here, in the material here. And I'll give you a clue. It's with a rock. Something with a rock. Not the rock that is the name of the movie star. Not that rock.
Can you teach us that it's something about banging a stick on the rock and instead of running, he
Well, I don't know.
should have had more faith or something?
I always imagine it more than a stick. I mean, this, in order for him at age 80, 85 to climb all the way to the top of the mountain, he needed more than just a stick. He needed a lot more power. But the story is in front of you here. But there are some verses that I want to use as the beginning of the explanation. So God suggested to Moses, God never suggests, sorry. God told Moses, yeah, if you have a God that suggests, you're in the wrong religion. You're definitely in the wrong religion. God told Moses, Uh, the people complain there's no water. I mean, constantly there's a difficulty in finding water in the desert. By the way, the water disappeared when Miriam died. There's a connection between Miriam, the prophetess, and the wealth of water, which is beautiful. So just to show you how this comes into fruition, on Passover, part of the Passover items on the table is a glass with water. And that symbolizes Miriam and the role of Miriam, the role that she played in the redemption of the Israelites. She was very important, and there are some books written about the role of Miriam. She is in the shadow, of course, most of the time of Aaron and Moses. And then one day, when she decides to criticize her beloved brother for marrying a black woman, she gets leprosy. They'll teach her a lesson. You don't speak against siblings because you never know when you're going to get a leprosy. So you need to be kind to the siblings. And Moses, of course, then prays on her behalf, and the leprosy disappears. And so the people are complaining there's no water. Moses is becoming frustrated from their complaints. I'm sure he had a therapist regularly next to him, helping him to deal with the frustration. And God says to Moses, here there's a rock, speak to the rock, and water will flow from the rock. Moses doesn't hear the word speak. He hears do something with the rock. Maybe something was lost in translation. He then takes the rod and hits the rock twice, not once, twice. Maybe in his anger, maybe in his frustration, we don't know. And water flows from the rock, of course. And this is the punishment. The punishment is you will never enter the promised land. I think it's a severe punishment, but something very interesting is going on. So the commentary in this Torah portion will reflect on how the Hasidic masters thought about this incident. Because you know it's not just on the biblical level. What I'm trying to do in those sessions is to go deeper and to show you that the Bible can be interpreted hundreds of times, and actually the people who put the commentary on the different verses can argue with people that put the commentary before on the same verses. Just because you have commentary on the verses of the Torah doesn't mean you cannot argue with the different commentaries. Actually is required. If you're not arguing, you're a lousy scholar. Your opinion will not be really considered as deep as all the other people that argue with each other. That's what Jews do in commentary. We have a lot of commentary for all those generations, and all of them are really, some of them are obnoxious arguments. Some of them are even arguments about a letter or the vowel that you didn't read correctly. And I mean, they are tough. Similar to the toughness of the teachers I had in my seminary. So once a week we'll give a sermon, and all the teachers are going to sit in front of us, and they will tear you apart in the commentary. Some of them will correct you while reading the Torah in Hebrew, in the middle of the reading. No, it's not ooh, it's ah. Okay. The student was freezing at that moment. But then they will take you to a room after the sermon, and there'll be just the teachers, not the students, and they will tear you apart for the sermon. You know, it was a tough few years, but we made it, thank God. So look at the second page. It starts with a verse from the text, speak to the rock before their eyes. So God says to Moses, do you see this? The first commentary on Speak to the Rock. You have it? I'm sorry we don't have numbers of the page, but it's page 1, 2, at the bottom of page 3. Yahweh. It starts with the word Yahweh. Do you see it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone is there? Not yet, okay.
Mubasser. Halak.
Yes, Never Tzedek. Mevasil Tzedek. The name of this teacher, the name of this Hasidic master is the one who announced or pronounced righteousness. That's the name of the teacher. Remember, they all had those names that have nothing to do with their real names. But that's how they wrote books. Okay, so who would like to read? Yahweh? Please, anyone?
Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, take the staff and assemble the community. You and your brother Aaron speak to the rock before their eyes, that it give water. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation facing the rock. He said to them, listen, you rebels, shall we bring you water out of this rock? Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff. Water came forth and the community drank, they and their cattle. Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, because you did not have the faith in me to sanctify me before the eyes of the children of Israel, you will not bring the congregation into the land I have given them. Number 2.
Can you imagine the reaction of Moses after hearing it? What am I doing with those people anymore? I mean, there's still a few more years before they get to the promised land. It doesn't happen so fast. Can you imagine Moses continuing his role as a leader, knowing that he's not going to make it to the promised land? He still was involved with them. He still took care of them. He still listened to their complaints. But if a clergy or some kind of a messenger hears this kind of an announcement, the hands become weak, the mouth doesn't really care anymore, the head doesn't work. It's devastating. But the Torah is not interested in giving us Moses' reaction. Moses is not important to the story of the Torah. That's why he's not mentioned in the Passover Haggadah. The name of Moses does not appear in the text of the Passover Haggadah. And you ask yourself, why? Why not? Shouldn't he get a little footnote? No, because it wasn't about him. What is the story about? What was the story of redemption and exile all about?
Following God.
It was about God. God is the main actor. Moses is just a little decoration a little flavor for the story. But it was God. So don't miss the importance of the exile. The plagues, the redemption, was all about God and God's power. God's power versus Pharaoh. It was all about elevating God to a level of a king that is not flesh and blood versus Pharaoh that was a human being. God is something, a whole different story. So
And that's why this scenario with the rock and the water, because Moses was making it about himself instead of
beautiful,
following God's
beautiful.
instructions. Is that right?
Yeah, beautiful. So it is possible that Moses, okay, come on, let's put Moses on the couch for a second. It is possible he was so frustrated with their complaints that out of anger, we do all kind of things. No? Yes? Can we retrieve some of the things we said to our children as a result of anger in our lives? Wow. We said some really harsh things to our children. No? Yes? Wow. Would you like to take it back? Immediately. Totally. So it is possible, because the commentary of the last 500, 600 years are all trying to find other reasons. You'll see how this works differently. But you're right. He says purposefully, do it in front of the eyes of the people. Why it was important to do it in front of the eyes? Why was the talking more important than hitting the rock? Well, the miracle is bigger because you can assume what? That the water comes as a result of what? No. Oh, the talking, yeah. If you see him hitting the rock twice, you will assume what?
That it was his power.
Exactly. By talking, have you tried to talk to people who are rocks? Nothing flows out. Nothing flows out. I mean, really, just you try different ways of talking and what? And those are people. So, yeah.
To argue a minute, if I...
What do you mean a minute? Why do we have to argue only for a minute? Why are you limiting the time of the argument?
Because you could want to force me out of here. But if you see God as the autocratic authority, then you would have to think that there's the ethical issue of God. If you take the idea that God is not really he is the oligarch rather than the understanding God. Moses acted out of, I was thinking when you mentioned the rod, there's a long tradition of the divining rod in terms of finding water. And so the rod leads you to this particular area. Well, Moses was so thirsty, he wanted water right now for his people. He didn't have time to wait for this rod to bend. I'm just giving that interpretation.
Yeah. Were you there?
Absolutely not.
It sounds like you were there.
No, I was not there. But I'm just saying that
Yes, you were there. That's the purpose of this, what we're doing.
okay?
The purpose of what we are doing is to put you there. The only God that can exist in this narrative of the exile is exactly the God with the bad names that you gave him.
Okay, very good.
There's no other God that can exist in this level. I suggested one time for you to read a God, a biography by John Miles. What he does in that book, which is a must book to read, don't get scared of how many pages. Lots of pages.
What's the name of it again?
God, a biography. God, a biography by John Miles. Too many pages. But all those pages are spent very carefully in describing the appearance of God in every book of the Jewish Bible. He, by the way, does the same with Jesus and God in the New Testament. I forgot the name of that book. But he's showing that the God of Genesis is not the God of Ezra. The God of Genesis is not, or the God of Exodus is not the God that appears to Job. It's the same word we use, but God is a lot more mature, developed, sophisticated, smart, kind. The God of the desert cannot be kind. The God in the desert creates discipline. He needs those people to, first of all, accept God. And by hitting the rock, what is Moses doing? Upstaging, yeah.
So you're talking as if God evolves, but is it actually humans' understanding of God? That
Beautiful, yeah, totally.
Okay, and I get caught up on the text itself. Reading it one time through, I don't perceive striking the rock as
a problem.
rebellion or anger, I presume, I put myself there, I just screwed up in how I was listening. that speaking.
You're so generous with Moses.
Yeah,
Well,
Why are you so generous?
yeah, but because I don't hear anger in there. I mean, on the part of it, Moses' part. So what makes us
Wait.
think that?
He says to the Israelites, listen, you rebels. You don't listen, you don't hear anger here? He calls his people rebels.
But I don't hear anger toward God.
No,
or disobeying.
no, he doesn't have anger. The frustration and the anger
Okay.
of dealing with people.
Well, I
Do
get
you know
that.
that my blood pressure fell down 24 points
When you retire.
by my physician? What are you talking about? You know how painful it is to lead people?
Yes. Yes.
We should...
I have a video, you wanna see it?
No. Is it of what? Of what?
It's a video of a shepherd, going along the road with a bunch of sheep, and the sheep overrun and beat the hell out of the shepherd, and then he's.
Oh, did you post that this morning?
I love it.
Oh, I
Send
love
it to me.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote on the top, sometimes pastors be
Right.
like this.
It was on Facebook this morning.
Totally. And we are not, and hopefully most of us are not doing it for 40 years.
Yeah.
And we're not in a desert condition. That's worse today. But no, I'm saying, yeah, think about us clergy compared to Moses. He never went to a school of how to be a clergy. Actually, his father-in-law, Jethro, is the one that put some wisdom in him about dividing the people into different groups. So, but I hear you.
Yeah, no,
I think this is the difficulty of reading only once in your lifetime the text.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that's why every week when we read Torah at the synagogue, there's a new commentary.
Circumstances are different.
Yeah, of course, all of us. That's why the Bible needs to be read at least 60, 70 times during one's
Why
lifetime.
it's a living document.
It's a living document. Beautiful. It's a living water. By the way, every time you hear water, it's not water. It's the words of the Torah. So in mystical Judaism, every time we see water in the Bible, in the original text, in Exodus, or that's why the water had to split. You cannot understand the water if the water that exists in the Ten Commandments, the movie. Whoa, you got to Universal Studio. How many of you have seen the splitting of the water in? Yeah. Wow. It's not about water. It's about the ability to go into the Torah commentary and argue about a split, about hair that exists there, and find commentary and study. The water where Pharaoh drowned is the wisdom of the Torah. The wells that Miriam was able to discover in the journey are living water. Living water is another word for Torah study, for going into the depth of the water and discover the wisdom. The mikveh, baptism, or in Judaism, the mikveh, when we take when women and converts in Judaism, they are brought to, women have rituals with the water. Converts are brought to the water. I started a few years ago to take people that went through chemotherapy to the mikveh, to immerse them in the mikveh when they were done with the chemotherapy because they needed to come alive again.
Oh.
I also took people that committed adultery in order to work on their relationship with their spouse, or maybe end their relationship with their spouse, to the mikveh. There is something of a healing power in the immersion in the water. And I'm sure this is how it's viewed in other religions. There is water is holy. You have the immersion, you have it's not about the swimming from one side of the ocean to the other. It's about what you do even in a small paddle. So that's what the water is.
Just to add to this complexity, as you prod the idea of, and which I think I totally agree with, and that is the recurring reinterpretation, you are vulnerable to the idea of situation ethics.
Totally.
And so then it can cause lots of unrest within any group. If you confine it to the Jewish leaders to have these interpretations, then it rolls downhill and everyone thinks that they should have the same right to their interpretation.
That's a danger.
Exactly. And so then how do you...
It's all about scholarship.
it's all what?
It's all about scholarship.
So it's an ongoing process.
Ongoing process, and it's done in classes with people that come to study that know that they don't know what they don't know. That's the only way. Or to encourage people to go to the books themselves. Yeah. So that's why it was important to give you the introduction last year of who are those people. So those people are there in a period of extreme legalism in Judaism, where it was more important the fork that you eat with and the cleanliness and the purity of the fork or the knife that cuts the meat that has to be kosher than talking about this material. So they brought up different nuances of commentary to allow the masses to receive some spiritual dimension in addition to the legalistic way of observing Judaism. So you have even today, and it was in the movie The Sacred, you have people in Judaism that do, following the Hasidic tradition, and they're all going to this grave in Uman, which is in the border with Russia, to experience things that are completely forbidden in other parts of Judaism, because it's important that you get up in the morning and the first thing that comes from your mouth is, "Blessed are you, God, who opens all the openings and closes all the closings in my body." You have 613 commandments that need to be observed and nothing else. This is the way. This is the legalistic way of doing it. But this did not work with Jews in different periods. Jews were interested in receiving also the mysterious, the one that adds flavor to all this.
The paradox.
The what?
The paradox.
The paradox, the
Which
ability.
we Westerners are kind of lousy at embracing.
Which what?
I think Westerners have more difficulty with paradox.
Or they don't know how to do it
They don't know how to
sometimes.
do it.
That's exactly what we talked about. Jews don't have a problem.
Right.
Jews don't have a problem with having problems. No, I mean, really, I mean, we know that it's complicated, and we know that if we want to find different meaning, we need to look at different commentary. And they're available. And there are people in Judaism that follow this commentary and people that follow the other commentary.
And it seems to be even added by the environment or the ecology, because they're in an area of shifting sands. So nothing is
All the
really
time.
Yes.
All the time shifting. And our sands were shifting very fast.
Yes.
I mean, think about Jewish history, and how do you ground yourself in the midst of history that puts you constantly in exile, and you need something to believe in, something real. So the only thing real was the text. That's why we kept such level of holiness in interpreting the text. The text is the only thing that is not shifting. The commentary is shifting.
Very good.
But the text is the text. I heard someone made a comment that all of us are still, those are shifting times.
Exactly.
But in Judaism, it's not only the shifting of the time, it's the shifting of the land. So when the land became the Torah became the land. Because that's the one you can take away. That's why the high percentage of Jews who go to universities, we were told from a young age, and part of it is because of our history, that the one thing people cannot take from you is your education. So go study, because you can lose the country, you can lose any kind of privileges, rights. By the way, we are too secure in America, which creates a bunch of ignoramus. No, I'm serious now.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Parents, look, yeah, but do you want constantly to think about yourself as the bottom of the ladder?
That's a good question.
I think the world is bereft of people that think this way all the time. I think there's wonderful to be humble. Reminds me the joke about the rabbi and the cantor and the custodian. They're getting ready to prepare for the high holidays. So the rabbi comes in front of the ark and says, I'm nothing, I'm nothing, I'm nothing. And then the cantor in front of the ark, I'm nothing, nothing, nothing. And then the custodian says, I'm nothing, nothing. And the rabbi says, look who thinks he's nothing. I think it's demoralizing if all of us in this room were thinking that we are nothing.
Don't you also, I'm sorry, don't
Yeah.
you also think that you give up your responsibility? I mean, you know that saying about to those who much has been given, much is expected?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
if I keep telling myself I'm nothing, then I also give myself permission not to do the
totally.
things I'm supposed to
Totally.
do.
Totally.
And don't you think that some of the problems we have right now?
Challenges. We don't have problems.
The challenges we have in our country are there are people who think they're nothing, so I have to be mean to her to put her down to make me feel better? Or
One of the-
join a group?
No, yeah. I mean, I think the tri-faith would not be happening if there were not enough people in each of the faith communities to have the eyes of the community. And I think that's, and I know that that there was bleeding here in the church, and people that were unhappy in the synagogue. But you know what? Someone needs to carry the water. Who's going to carry the water?
I would argue the other way around, which is that I think, not to make this a political discussion, but I think that there are people in America, in our culture, who have been given much, and then they've isolated themselves and failed to lead, failed to show a better path.
Yeah,
or
great
people-
yeah.
Yeah.
Where are the poets? Where are the writers in America? How come we can select some of them to be the presidents?
The truth tellers.
Truth tellers. There are prophets in America. There are people who wrote amazing books that are creating major changes. I mean, where are those people? Because politics is a dirty word now. I mean,
Well, the politics brings everything down to the bottom run.
Totally. But there is the uprising on the street. And thank God for the women. Nothing in this country will happen without the women. Okay. Let's go back to the text. Okay, the last line, continue
But
reading.
Moses' intent was really for the good of Israel, for those ordinary people.
Again, a defense of Moses. He did not pay attention to the eyes because he wanted to the ordinary. Pay attention to the ordinary. Go on.
There is certainly an inner Hasidic address behind this homily. The Tzaddik becomes frustrated when he tries to offer the sort of mystical teachings that will raise people up to the great source of life. He sees that they are not with him, that he cannot succeed in bringing them to that level. Instead, he gives them what they want, visible miracles, striking the rock. Such a tzaddik, the author tells us, is not fit to lead, to bring the people into the land. Find those with whom you can communicate on a deep level, raise them up to the highest places. Perhaps they will be the ones capable of taking the next step and bringing water to the masses through their holy words, not needing to lower themselves by resorting to the outward sign, the cheap trick that lies within the holy man's powers.
Wow. Isn't this like a great lesson in the seminaries? Yeah. Is it possible to do? That's the question. Like, for example, how much time, Chris, I'm asking you, how much time you spend with the people that left the church?
Currently?
No, in a sense, how much time we spend with each family to try to keep them here?
Well, we did an intentional 40 days of discernment that was in conversation with
Beautiful.
everyone.
40 days, corresponding to the 40 years. I love it, yeah.
That was following Easter the first year, just to decide if that was our calling. And then after that, we spent a year and a half talking to people about what it would take, why we would still consider doing this, that kind of stuff.
Oh, what will be the...
So it was 2 full years of discernment.
But isn't your question, did we focus on those
Individuals.
I did.
individuals?
How much time was spent on those versus the time that was spent on this crowd?
Well, we did a sermon across the board, but we made specific workshops and discernment times for those people who were struggling, mostly.
But those who struggled and left felt that we didn't communicate with them on a pastoral and I don't mean pastoral meaning clergy, but any of us in any kind of one-on-one. And I think there's some truth to that criticism.
No, but this is exactly what Moses did not do.
Right.
I did
So-
do that one-on-one.
I know, but I'm saying the energy that was spent on the people that left,
It was way more than the
way more than the energy and the teaching that was spent on those with the eyes.
Right.
That's what I'm suggesting.
They would not say that, though.
Yeah,
Like she
they
said,
don't.
if you asked them, they would say that.
Well, nothing is enough for them, yeah. So it is possible. It is possible. We know for sure that even after the water came from the rock, after 2 strikes in the rock, they didn't get it. Because 2 minutes later, they rebel against something else. They never got it. That's why none of them made it to the promised land, except those 2. None of them was capable of understanding. And it was not just the promised land, it was a higher concept in the Hasidic teaching. What is the highest, what is the promised land? The top of the stairway, the top of the ranks. You can also live in the promised land and never understand where you are. I think many of us already are in our promised land and we don't get it.
Yeah.
We don't get it. Why is it so hard to be satisfied where you are at this moment in your life?
You asked that question last week,
That's a question I ask all the time.
and none of us raised our hands. And then Ann and I went home, and I said, I think I'm in the promised land. I don't think my life could be much better.
Beautiful.
Does that mean I don't have problems? Challenges? Sure, I got challenges. But
Like all of us.
yeah.
Yeah, but this idea of it's so hard to find people who are happy where they are.
What's that living in that paradox, that there is both pain and joy
Yeah,
in living,
yes,
even in paradox?
I'm a social worker, so it's
I'm
hard-
sorry.
It's a curse. So it's hard for me to think this way and not think I'm leaving somebody behind or whatever. But the thing I wanted to ask you about is some of the rebels might have been able to change.
If they were able to change, there'll be more than 2 people getting to the promised land. God will not punish those people that had a potential of changing, but they didn't make it. What is it about not making it? It is possible that you could get them out of Egypt, but you cannot get Egypt out of them.
Oh, okay.
It is possible that darkness of Egypt was serious darkness. As a social worker, you know how hard it is to move people. I think the statement that none of them made it except those 2 people gives you an indication of what kind of lower level those people were. You cannot conquer a land, because what happened when they got to the promised land? They had Joshua as an army officer. They had to fight. Those people were not capable of fighting against armies. They fell apart when there was no water. Those are not the fighters. Which, of course, it is possible it never happened. And maybe a few more snuck in. I always envision this can be a movie. Not only the 2 made it, there were all kind of other people that found a way to make it. It's impossible to actually accept the words of the Torah without thinking about this not happening this way. Let's continue with the last 2 lines, please.
To whom around the maggot's table were such comments being addressed? Who is this well-meaning would-be miracle worker who is pitching his message too low?
Yeah. By the way, it's a critique, but there are people around the table of the maggot, around the table of the people that created this literature, that maybe wanted the masses, wanted to pay attention. Maybe that's why they actually created Hasidic Judaism for the masses. But during the creation of the vehicle to reach the masses, they ignored the eyes of the community. They didn't ignore themselves because they were sitting in a great table. Can you imagine all the discussions around that table? Isn't this a table you would like to be the rest of your life? Actually, there were some tables in a movie that I wanted to leave everything I do now and go there. I mean, you know, there are those tables that we yearn to be part of. That's why the word table is being used so much now. Where you get different kind of food, the food you need for your soul.
I heard a Christian minister say once, I so wish we used the symbol of the table instead of the symbol of the cross to share what we are.
Yeah, yeah. And
That's
that's
pretty
why,
interesting.
but we're doing it with, I mean, a tri-faith is a potential to do it, if we do it correctly. Yes?
Just add that the very word conversation has verse as the core, the root.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That's great.
Wow. Nice.
Or we can say, what is it, a gray?
There's a little gray Honda CRV parked near the trailer on the side of the church, and the trailer can't be removed. Does anybody in this group drive a gray CRV? One near the trailer?
By the gym?
On the west side
On
of
the gym side? Yeah, the west.
the food trailer for community center. Big.
Well, he said, I mean, I'm just, it's a truck driver, so I mean, anything behind what he's got is a little. Sorry, it's not.
No, so how do we treat this driver of the truck? I mean, so that's where the danger exists. I heard you being very careful in not claiming any kind of elitism or any kind. At the end, the question is how you treat the truck driver. I mean, you know, what do we do?
Hit him twice with the stick.
Now, the question was, do I wait until the rabbi's class is over to announce this and make him wait? Or do we do it now?
Immediately. That was the right thing to do. Yeah, that's the way.
And if we go back to conversation again, there is basically, we use the word verisimilitude or veracity, which all refers to truth. So when we are at the table, we are trying to exchange the truths.
Absolutely. Without pressing anyone, without forcing anything. I know that sometimes the discussion in peace agreement between Israel and the Arab countries was about the shape of the table.
Exactly.
You cannot imagine how many people walked out because the shape of the table was not the right one.
Paris peace talks.
Peace talks, yeah. Look, we have more time, so let's continue one more with Before Their Eyes. So we continue. So this is a commentary of someone else that suggests that Before Their Eyes means something else. Who would like to read this one? Please.
Before their eyes, is that the right place?
Yeah, that's the quotation from the text. Continue.
Before their eyes should be understood, as in, all flesh together shall see that the mouth of Yahweh has spoken. This is also like, all the people saw the voices. The voice was so holy that they could experience it with the sense of sight. So too, David blessed Yahweh before the eyes of all Israel. Here too, before their eyes means that the people Israel were to see the act of speech. That is why both Moses and Aaron are commanded, speak is in the plural form. The sages refer to this in teaching that whenever two are engaged together in Torah, the Shekhinah is present between them. Here the whole intent was to invoke the, am I saying that right?
The Shekhinah presence.
Shekhinah's presence.
Yeah. So God is in this room because we have more than two people. I mean, so whoever two are engaged together in Torah, the Shekhinah, God's presence. Shekhinah is something that was created in the mystical period in the 16th century. That's where the word appears. There was a need to add this feminist presence of God into the life of the Jews. So here, the issue is the speaking. Again, there's some kind of a power in the speaking that God wanted Moses to exercise. The speak was important. Continue with the next paragraph. In the spirit.
In this spirit, the Zohar teaches that had Moses spoken to the rock, there would have been no forgetting. That is, the Torah would never be forgotten.
So what's the power of speaking?
Remembering.
Speaking helps to remember. You hear words, teachers, you repeat the words, which is a different than what? The hitting, it is possible that event is going to be forgotten in future generations. You have to speak the words of the Torah. You have to teach the words of the Torah by speaking them. Go on, continue. Forgetfulness.
Forgetfulness is a fall from awareness.
Totally. Don't we realize this? When we forget, we are removed from awareness. Go on.
As is written in the copies, manuscripts of the Majid's teachings, the reason is that all the miracles Moses performed were accomplished by speech alone. He did not belong to the realm of action.
So, which is so bizarre on the part of Moses to do what? To do the actions. Everything is spoken. Constantly in the Torah, you'll see Moses spoke to the people of Israel. Moses spoke. It's for a person that had difficulty with speech impediment, we know this, at the beginning. That's why he refused to go to Pharaoh. So what did God do? God put Aaron as a helper. So Aaron is there in the picture. Poor guy. I'm only his brother. Why do you force me to do all this stuff? I mean, by the way, Aaron is a whole different character we also need to put on a couch. Fascinating character. A character that is known for bringing peace by the action of building a golden calf, which is so bizarre. So we all think from reading the story about the golden calf, how dare Aaron builds a golden calf? How else he will prevent the people of killing you down there? They're waiting for Moses to come back from the mountain. He's there for so long. So Aaron appears as a prince of peace. So all of his actions in the Torah are done by speech. Continue.
He was told to lift up his staff, but the sea was subdued by the word alone, with no need to strike it. This was not the case with Joshua. Moses represents the category of mind or awareness. As such, he was drawn towards speech. His generation was also called the generation of awareness. For this reason, they are referred to as
Dor Hamidbar. Just a second. So the book of Numbers has the wrong name in English. You don't get it. Numbers? What numbers? Bamidbar means in the desert. But Bamidbar means with the talking, with the speech. Ledaber in Hebrew is to speak. So it's the same root of the word desert. In the desert, there were a lot of words. Bamidbar, so it has medaber is to speak, and midbar is desert. So the book is called Bamidbar, or in the speaking. That's what Moses is known for. Not for actions, but for speech. That's what the book. So that's the problem of translation. Bereshit is in the beginning, Genesis. Exodus, Shmot is about the names, because the beginning of the book of Exodus about the names. Every book, Vaikra, which is Leviticus, has nothing to do with the word Leviticus. Vaikra is, and he called. It's all about speech. That's what Moses has been doing all the time. That's why the action of hitting the rock is not clear. Continue. Yeah, someone else, okay. When his first generation, please continue there.
When this first generation was dying out and another coming along, Moses thought that they were people more related to action. They were going to inherit the land, that is, earthiness. That was why he struck the rock. But the Blessed Holy One said just the opposite. His task was to uplift that second generation, to raise them higher. They were to inherit it by following in the way of their fathers, Genesis 48:6. Speech alone would have brought water out of that rock. As for the generation of the Midbar, in this way they too would have become a generation of awareness. By hitting the rock, he brought about forgetfulness, a fall from speech to action, as the Zohar teaches. Thus far have I seen in the copies.
They talk among themselves. So what is going on? So it's not the first explanation, which is there. What was the first explanation from the paragraph, from the chapter we read before? That what happened? He missed the point with who? With the eyes of the community, with few righteous people that got him. Here is the opposite. He missed the entire generation. It's not about, this is exactly this fight of yours to become humble. It's not about few people in a community. It's about the entire community that he failed. So his punishment was he failed to bring them up to a higher level than action. Action is not the higher level. The higher level is awareness. You need to get to awareness before you get to action.
Now, that ties in with what you commented earlier about numbers is the wrong word to use in the translation.
Yeah, it's,
Now, numbers, and I'm going to make a tremendous leap here, but we've moved in our society away from religion to the world of science. Science is primarily about numbers. And so our focus is on numbers that identify things. And the things, whether it be chemistry or whatever, it's still a thing. But we're away from the idea of awareness. Awareness is of the mind. It's a kind of mindfulness.
yeah.
And
Without worry about the bottom number. We always worry about the bottom number,
yes,
The data.
the data.
exactly.
Corporations, education, we all need to see the data.
Yes.
Survey after survey after survey that no one reads.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about the data.
That's it. So around the table, there are different teachers sitting, and they're coming with the same verses and giving a deeper and deeper interpretation. That's what I'm trying to do with bringing this material here.
And you're bringing not just knowledge, but you're bringing wisdom.
Which has to lead to awareness. The tree of life, it's all about the tree of life. Why is this protection already in the beginning about the tree of life and the tree of wisdom? Those two trees, everything starts there. The beginning of the awareness and the wisdom start in the story of Eden. And we just don't get always the depth of that story. All the truth is there.
I think that fits into Buddhism as well.
Jubu. Yeah. I mean, that's what's happening. That's what happened to generations of young Jews who were looking for spirituality and mysticism, and also to a bunch of young Christians and other, yeah, the whole young generation looking for that kind of a nirvana instead of the busy work of studying the text.
Too bad.
Anyway, this crowd, if this crowd was standing there, Moses will just speak. Moses will just speak. Thank you. Thank you very much. Who voted for him? And I'm mentioning him with a small age. No. They constantly do this. Constantly now, when they analyze the future elections, they say how many white people with education, how many white people without education, which is in a way a terrible statement about all of us. I hate when they do this, but that's the reality. So it's interesting what happened when we finally went to the land. By the way, we have not even gone into this, but I mean, it's, and that's okay. It's okay in Jewish classes to do this because you always touch, at the end I'll get there. But what happened now that the state of Israel exists and we have a land, and you assume that if you live on the land and you are secure, who is secure any place? But if you are secure in the land, that maybe everyone is going to be involved in the study of Torah. I mean, this is a land, you are safe. Are you kidding? I became a Jew in America. I was a secular Israeli, born to secular parents that didn't have anything to do with religion. So this is in the Holy Land that we secure now. Now what's happening here in America? America was supposed to be the golden Medina, the golden country. And so here we have the luxury of being able to be involved In study, no one is knocking on our door at 4 o'clock in the morning telling us to get dressed and follow them. And we are becoming ignorant here. So those are interesting variations of my need not to go back to this. Okay. So now comes the commentary. Let's continue. Tzaddik, you know already tzaddik. What tzaddik? Tzaddik are those people that lived in this period. Tzaddik is someone who is a righteous individual. You know them, you have them in this congregation. You have in this congregation tzaddiks. Tzaddik is just a righteous individual that follows God and tries to do the best they can do, which is most of us. Okay, so tzaddik, continue. Who is, anyone reading? Please.
A tzaddik who wants to bring about some change in the order of creation needs to go to the root of the thing that is to be changed. Suppose someone made a vessel out of clay. If you wanted to change its function, you would go back to its maker and ask him to change it to suit your purpose.
Wow. Okay, so the tzaddik had magical powers. Tzaddikim are people in the community that want to do a change with someone, with something in the community, but they need to go to the root and have a relationship with the maker to be able to effectuate a serious change. We're not talking about minuscule changes. We're not talking about those changes. Moving the table so people can sit here. We're talking about something drastic that needs to happen with the world around us that needs a change. You have to go to the root to discover what exactly is the makeup of the things you want to change. You have to have a better understanding, a clear vision, a wisdom that is beyond the regular. That's how they explain the tzaddik. And they give an example of the clay, a vessel, because this is also attributed to God. God is the clay maker. God is the one that takes clay and makes humanity out of it. God took earth from the four corners of the world. What is earth? It's clay. So let's continue. When Moses
wanted to get water for the people to flow miraculously from the rock, he had to raise the people up to the rock's own source. Everything can be transformed at its root. This is what the Blessed Holy One intended, that Moses uplift the people. Then speaking would have been sufficient. Moses did so, but the ordinary folk also needed water, and he wasn't able to raise them up to that high level, the source above. Thus he did not succeed and was forced to strike the rock, representing a lower level of religious action, as is detailed in the selected teachings of Rabbi
Isaac Luria. Oh, wow. What a wonderful defense for Moses. What Moses intended to do? What was his original idea?
Raise the people up.
I need to bring those ex-slaves, those ignorant rebels, to a level of understanding God's existence in the world. And you know what? I don't think I can do it just by talking to the rock, because this will be extremely hard for them to perceive. I mean, we have difficulty seeing people talking. We sometimes put them in special houses. I mean, is it possible that some of the people in mental institutions should not be there because maybe there's a truth they're speaking that we don't understand? I'm sorry, I go to this example. But he wanted to elevate all the people, all the rebels. We know what he thinks about them. We know that he thinks that they're in a very lower degree of holiness because he calls them rebels. He already gave them a label. He doesn't see them anything else except rebels. He wanted to bring them to a higher level of understanding of the role of God in their lives. He realizes, what? I'm not going to be able to do it. So then he goes to the most simple, primitive way of getting there. What is the most simple, primitive way? Boom, boom, twice. There is still miraculous in that action, but it's not as powerful and as deep as just words. Words that he will speak to the rock. This is who is this Yitzchak Luria, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, at the end. This is taken from his book. This is one of the most important mystics in Judaism, 16th century, living in Tzfat. Tzfat, one day when you go to Israel, by the way, we have to go to Israel as a tri-faith. Yeah. You have to end up in this synagogue, the synagogue of this Ari, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, in Tzfat. It's a blue synagogue. Blue like the sky. So the synagogue was painted a long time ago in blue, because what he wanted to create is people walking into heaven. So you'll see a lot of synagogues in Israel in blue color inside, and you can identify it. And he is the man that is responsible for the idea that I share with you about how the world was created, with a God limiting God's light, and in the space, the empty space, creating the world. He is really one of the most important mystics. By the way, his books are all translated to English. So there's no excuse not to read it. And it's good to read it around the table when people can talk about this. So he brings the reference from him. Let's continue. Someone else may be reading now. He still needs to explain why Moses was punished. Just coming to his defense is nice, but okay, so come on, God is so small that he needs to pick. Didn't God understand what was the intention of Moses? To bring all of them up to a higher level of holiness? Remember, the whole issue in mystical Judaism is to climb what? The ranks. He wanted to bring them to a higher level of understanding. So here comes the reader, please. Who would like to read this?
The tzaddik was punished for this, even though it was impossible even though it was impossible to raise up the masses. He should have elevated the tzaddikim, who are called the eyes of the community.
Oh, he should at least try to elevate what? The righteous among them. Not all of them are rebels. Don't treat your congregation as all of them are in the same level. You have some people in this congregation or in my congregation that were capable of getting there by themselves if you just helped with the words instead of hitting. That's in a way. Don't treat everyone the same in a way. If you look at a community, in a community, and how do I know this? Because there is a verse that says the eyes of the community. They interpret the eyes of the community, not the entire congregation. What are they doing with the eyes of the community? Who are the eyes of the community?
The righteous.
No, but who are the, for example, this community, who would call the eyes of the community? You think maybe the clergy, the eyes of the community, but it is possible that there are, not it's possible, for sure, there are other people in this community. I think all of the people that assemble themselves and thought about moving, for example, the people that were the power, they were more than just the clergy. They were righteous people that understood what's the purpose. You see, I don't think we know yet what's the power of the tri-faith. But think about the tri-faith as the rock that needs to provide the water. What books you brought? I knew you went for books. I knew. She always leaves.
These are the Jack Miles books he recommended, God the Biography,
Yeah.
and then the New Testament version is called Christ.
Christ. So I would suggest to start with the Bible, with the Jewish Bible, and then go to Christ. Because you'll see that Christ is developed in the New Testament similar, in a parallel way that God is described in the Old Testament.
So this talks about the eyes of the community, right?
The eyes of the communities are just a reference to the visionary, to the righteous people in the community that can see something years before it's being created. I think sometimes we put everyone in the same level and we pay the price for that. And we need to elevate people that get that story. I don't think the clergy are the only people in a community that understand the story. And she fainted.
What a relief for the clergy then, that it's not all on them. That's a lot of
But,
pressure.
oh my God, but wait a minute. The clergy are responsible to develop them.
Yeah.
Moses' job was at this moment to find those tzaddikim, the righteous individuals, and just use the words to be able, because they were there already. They are there. What do you do? What do you do in classes when sometimes you are brought back for a lowest common denominator? What are we doing with people in the community who already,
Education parallel.
a what?
You're making me think of education.
Yeah.
What we do, yeah, what a teacher does,
I mean, maybe we need to take those kids from the classroom that we know have a special gift and do something just with them instead of, by the way, we need to do something with the other people.
Yeah.
For the other people, we need to hit the rock twice. There are some people that just words will be enough. And those kids are getting so bored in our classes. And adults get so bored. You have to create different levels of education according to the level of the understanding of the people that are there.
But you also need the people with their eyes open to help to motivate and bring others along.
And you pay the price for that. Yeah, I agree. This is what's so good about Judaism, that I can have two opposing views and accept both of them, and they're both correct. But how long are you going to keep the people with the eyes with the others?
You can't treat them all the same, but you have to have them to influence each other.
Yeah, so that's why you put one of those tzaddikim with one of the weak, and you work some kind of a mental relationship. There's a way of creating this stuff, but it's complicated.
And it costs money.
There was no money here. No one worried about money here. They had a good time. Good time. They just stole everything from the Egyptians, which is a very problematic verse. So let's continue. So he was punished not for what he did, but for not using other righteous individuals to be able to help him in conducting himself in relationship to the other people. So go on.
Even though it was impossible to raise up the masses, he should have elevated the tzaddikim, who are called the eyes of the community, so that Yahweh would be sanctified in their sight.
Yeah, at least sanctify God to the people that can perceive it and understand it. Start with them. Then you get helpers that can help you with the rest of them. Don't take everything on your shoulder. Try to elevate leadership in a church, or leadership in the group that walked in the desert, or leadership in a synagogue that can take the burden from the shepherd. It's an art. there was a period of time in my rabbinate here that there was a break, and we didn't know really who is going to be the president of the synod. It was my fault. It was my fault that I didn't work hard enough to be able to have a smooth transition of leadership, of people that in advance see with their eyes. And so that was a disaster what happened that year in the leadership and the relationship with the congregation. Anyway, you know, that's what you do in the high holidays if you're Jewish. You hit your chest when you say, I sinned, I transgressed, I regret. It's so interesting that you have to have a physical movement in front of your people of doing this as a leader. And it's written in the instructions. That's what you do. But this, for them to see, you know, I wonder if Moses ever did it after this. I wonder if Moses became a little bit more humble after this. What were the changes in him? So continue.
Thus, the verse says, Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation, including the ordinary masses.
Yeah, so you need to assume you have ordinary masses always when you assemble communities. Go on.
Facing the rock, having them look into the rock towards its source. In this lay their failure. The ordinary folk were just not able to rise up that high. Once Moses saw that they were unable to concentrate on the source, but only on the rock below, he said to them, Listen, you rebels, shall we bring you water out of this rock, meaning the rock you see? This is indeed impossible. And since you are incapable of rising to the root, it will not bring water forth for you. Therefore he struck the rock, acting at a lower level. Then the community drank, including the masses.
Wow. So Moses knew all the time that there is a group of people that will never get it. So the rock, how did we start worshiping God? I mean, what was the primitive way of worshiping God? And it's still done in some places in the world. Idols. What are the idols? The idols in a way symbolize the rock. It's there, it's stationary. Maybe it has a shape, maybe not. But this is what you can perceive. Actually, Moses should say, I'm sorry guys, you're not getting it. This is not the whole picture. Okay, we're starting with small pictures. The rock. And then I have to, then I know that there are other ways of perceiving it. Thank God we are not there anymore. Although some people are there. Some people that are members of synagogues and mosques and churches still worship idols. What are the idols that we worship now? Oh my God.
Money.
What?
I was actually going to say for some people, the Bible itself is an idol.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. 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 The Bible can become an idol. Everything there is true, and this is the way I need to observe it. And that's why the movie was so strange, because the movie was done by fundamentalists.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a conversation that your dear husband started by asking the question that he asked. And I don't think he got a full answer from all the panels. And I think this is a topic for a larger conversation. We need to open that conversation. Because this morning, Chris came a little bit early to the office, and if I am a liberal movie maker, what would I do about the tri-faith? How would I show the sacredness and the holiness in the midst of the tri-faith? She had answers. She always has answers. No, but for example, I know it may be boring, but to have a camera here and see what's happening here that's maybe a way of reaching holiness and sacredness. Well, that's how I feel when I walk into this room every Monday. There's something special that happens in relationship of studying and learning from you.
They actually do have cameras.
Oh my God, it's going to become a movie. Scary, scary. All your names will appear in the titles. We'll get the release form. Okay. They were not capable of rising to the root. So the root is what? The root is God, but it's God's world. God, in a way, is not as important than the world that God has created. So, what's going on around us? That this is where the blindness sometimes happens. We agree about God. Okay, I mean, you know, I'm not going to have a survey now. I assume we walk into this church believing in God. But this will be, again, idol worshiping if God remains at the center with us being blind completely to the people that are God's creation. What's the point in talking about God and not talking about people? And not watching people's faces and seeing who needs help and who needs encouragement and who needs a word of love and affection. What's the point? God can become an idol by itself if that's the only thing similar to the Bible or the whatever the sacred writings. But God too can become an idol.
I think that Jesus Christ has become an idol for a lot of people.
Well, you have to teach me now. Talk to me.
Well,
No, because I don't have a view of Jesus Christ this way, but
Well, I think that often it's, and perhaps I'm going to speak fundamentalist Christianity in particular. You know, you talk about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is above God. You know, and it's almost like you're part of a special club as long as you're. I mean, last night on the Super Bowl, did you hear him thanking Jesus Christ?
the coach at the end.
Yes, and my husband blurted out, I hate to tell him, but Jesus doesn't give a damn about football. You know? So,
But they won.
because of Jesus.
So something is wrong in your thesis.
But you know, there's a difference between following the example of Jesus Christ and believing in the teachings of Jesus Christ and idol worshiping Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And I think Christianity has gone astray, and it focuses on idol worshiping of Jesus Christ.
Not all of Christianity.
No, not all,
Yeah.
but a lot. Again, I come from my Missouri Synod Lutheran, so when it oozes out of me when I say Christianity.
Definitely. It oozes in all power. Totally.
The argument there is not that they're worshiping Jesus Christ, it's whether or not you believe Jesus as the Christ is the Son of God.
Yeah.
And if you believe that whole thing, then to use the name of Jesus Christ is the same as using God. So fundamentalists believe that when they're speaking.
I don't understand why it's so hard for them to understand why Jews don't accept that.
Yeah.
I mean, from the beginning it was monotheistic. From the beginning we knew there's no shape. The shape is given by the letters that fly up to heaven and come back to us. The letters of the Torah. Every letter has a shape and a part of what God wanted us to believe or see or understand. I'm doing injustice by teaching you this in English, but there's no other way to do it. Because you'll see something if we get there. Okay, let's finish. One more reader for the last few lines.
Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, because you do not have the faith in me to sanctify me before the eyes of the children of Israel, these are the community's eyes, the Sakida.
Tzadikim, the righteous.
Tzadikim. Even though you couldn't succeed with the ordinary people, you needed to sanctify me before the eyes, the proper leaders. Because of this, you will not bring.
Wow. Actually, God appears to be a lot more harsh with Moses from reading the commentary. You just ignored those people that were capable or already on the rank that I want them to be. You gave them nothing. This is a great accusation of Moses. You were worried so much about the masses, you forgot about the people that are above the masses. And this is a great teaching of what we need to do and in dealing with the community. This is the art. I think this is the art of being a clergy. The art of being a clergy is not giving the impression at all to the masses that you only care about the righteous, the eyes of the community, but then not to leave the eyes of the community hungry. How do we do this? How do we work in all those levels in order to raise everyone toward the root, toward God? That's why I'm so, so one of the critique at me was that I actually took all kind of comments from you today, and the conversation led to different places. If I needed to do my work today, I would push everything away and just what?
I said, follow the lesson plan.
Yeah.
And follow the lesson plans. But it's impossible. Because I know that the people that came today, oh my God, all of you that came and venture the outside snow, it's coming down nicely. You guys already are the eyes of the righteous that are here. You guys are those people. Nothing kept you away today. So did I do the right thing with you or not? I mean, so those are the kind of questions we need to ask ourselves. Yes. Are you going to take the conversation away to another topic?
I only want to say that maybe we aren't the eyes. Maybe we are searching just to be the eyes.
No, I don't want to let you off the hook so easily. No, you have responsibility. Yeah, there are some people in this group that have went beyond the search. They're not there anymore. You guys have to see this. You guys have to be completely aware of the gifts that you possess and move on. I know it's attractive to be part of a community, but people need to see themselves not in a sense of elitist feeling, not as I'm better than them. No, I'm capable of providing something in this community of holiness.
But I would respond with, when we talked about the human, and we can use the HUM as the root, because root has been an issue here with the water and the word. Human, HUM, refers to also not only human and humble, but it refers to humus, which is the soil.
Yeah.
So since we are of the soil, it should always have a kind of bottom of the ladder